So as I said in the vlog a number of times, the kind of subject matter we're tackling here is all over the place, and the way we're going to present it is going to be diverse, but our primary goal here is to make really interesting YouTube videos about what's happening in the world. And I wanted to share with you a little bit of some of the kinds of stories we've been looking at. So kind of where we are in the process right now is like we want to get to a daily show. And right now we are producing videos. We're making them as fast and as many of them as we can. Some aren't good, some are better, none of them we're publishing, but we are doing stuff. So to share with you a little bit, like back in May, there was this scene outside of the Turkish ambassador residence in DC where there was these like Turkish security officers beating the ever-living shit out of demonstrators. And I remember seeing that on Twitter and being like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then I realized it was in the United States of America, that was taking place in DC. And I came into the office here and we were all talking about, we're like, let's focus on that. So we dove into it. In particular, if you look at this footage, that older guy there that was kicked in the face, who was an American citizen, we were like, let's find out who that is. Let's try to speak to that man and get his perspective. Hello, sir. My name's Casey.
Hi, Casey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Here's a short cut down of what that looked like. Turkey doesn't exactly have a stellar human rights record. Stuff like this, it happens all the time in Turkey.
Let me tell you this. As a Kurd from Turkey, this is nothing.
Tell me what happened.
This is America. This is one of the most democratic country in the world. And in the nation capital, they are trying to kill us. They are hitting us.
All right, so why we didn't publish that? When we finished that, it was good, but it felt like kind of weirdly newsy, and all the stuff where I'm interviewing Saeed was really just he and I speaking, but the rest of the news around it was me reading from a teleprompter, and it didn't feel right. So we learned a lot, but we never published it. Another story is when the terrorist attack on May 22nd took place in Manchester, that was all over the news. And the story was always the same. It was kind of like, what are we gonna do now to combat terrorism? And as we talked about in here, we're like, well, a question we'd like answered is, how does a normal person go from being a normal person to becoming a terrorist? That was a question we wanted to answer. So for that story, we sent Neha, who's one of our reporters, we sent her down to DC, where she went to George Washington University, and she spoke with some experts there on extremism.
This is actually a map of individuals that we have identified as using social media to reach out to Westerners and encourage them to carry out attacks.
We actually interviewed like a white supremacist or a former white supremacist who went from being a normal person to being an extremist, who went back to being a person who is not an extremist. And we learned a lot from that.
I was taught that other people who were not white were parasites. These recruiters are looking for vulnerable young people. They're very good at this, for looking at people who are marginalized.
They look for a person with a big fat void in his life or her life, and then they step in and they fill that void with really bad intentions. Now, again, the reason why we didn't do that is it felt too documentary, like documentary-y. The vibe of it didn't feel enough like a YouTube video. It didn't feel right, so we pulled that back too. And then another story is the story that I shared with you in the vlog, which is this story about click farms. That's a story that Jake hosted because I was out of town or something, and he's also a better host than me. And that's a story that we found to be really, really compelling. And when we finished that story, that's the one we were like, this is the vibe. This feels right. And that's why I shared a little bit of that on the vlog, and that's why I want to share with you now an extended version of that. One caveat before I play this back for you. At the end of this, you'll hear Jake talk about something called Panels. Now, Panels is an app we built here at Beme, and it's a way for us to get people's opinions that aren't like old men in suits that we pay to give us their opinions, but it's you. It's normal people from around the world that are able to download our app and within the app sort of see what we're talking about and chime in. And then we take their clips and we include them in our news broadcast, in our show. That app's not public yet, but it'll be out soon. Okay, so here's like the extended version of the Click Farms piece. You've probably seen this before in the vlog.